story about Daniel and some patient lions. Daniel lived a long time ago. While Jehoiakim was king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, captured the city of Jerusalem and plundered it. He took men from the Israelite nobility and took them into a program of training for service in the Babylonian court. Daniel was one of the young noblemen chosen. He served the king for many years and found favour with him by being able to interpret the king's dreams when no one else could do so. He was promoted and honoured, and when the king died, Daniel served his son Belshazzar, and also interpreted some unknown writing which foretold the death of the new king. Darius the Mede then took control of the kingdom of the Babylonians. Daniel continued to serve the royal household and distinguished himself because of his exceptional qualities. Darius planned to set him into the position of highest honour below the king. But the other courtiers and chief ministers were unhappy at this, and they tried finding grounds to bring charges against Daniel, but they were unable to do so because Daniel was honest and trustworthy and upright. He couldn't be called negligent or corrupt, as he simply wasn't that type of person. The chief ministers realised that their only hope was to incriminate Daniel for his religious beliefs, so they put a plan into action that they hoped would lead Daniel to his downfall. First they began by speaking to the king. "Oh, my lord, the King Darius," they began, "your chief ministers have agreed that a royal proclamation needs to be made. We need to make sure that you are the only one to be worshipped. So we need to issue an edict that anyone who is found to be worshipping or praying to any god during the next month will be thrown to the lions." "Do you really think that's necessary?" the king responded. "Oh yes, my lord the king," his chief ministers replied. "A proclamation needs to be made and signed and issued immediately so that it becomes a royal law that cannot be changed." So Darius had the edict drawn up, set his seal upon it, and it was proclaimed law. And despite knowing that the edict had become law, Daniel went home to his house, went upstairs and opened the windows which faced towards Jerusalem, and there he began to pray to God, as he did regularly every day. Now the chief ministers, who had known this would happen, went to Daniel's house and heard him praying, and they could see him through the windows of his house, giving thanks to God and worshipping him. The ministers went to speak with the king. "My lord the king," they began, "Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, has been seen and heard praying to God in his house. He worships God 3 times a day, and in so doing is breaking the new law. He needs to be punished. He needs to be thrown to the lions, just as the new law demands." "I'll consider your news," replied the king. Darius the king was deeply troubled, as Daniel was known to be a good man who would serve the royal household faithfully. He consulted with other advisers and tried to find a way to avoid the inevitable. In the evening, the chief ministers again went to see the king. "My lord the king," they began, "has the king considered the actions of Daniel in praying to his God, and is the king mindful that a royal proclamation may not be changed?" "Bring Daniel to me," the king replied. Daniel was brought before the king and his chief ministers. "Daniel, there is no alternative. You know there was a royal proclamation, and yet you still chose to worship God 3 times a day. May your God whom you serve continually rescue you." Darius had no choice but to send Daniel to the lions. As well as the chief ministers, Darius accompanied Daniel and was present when the stone was rolled across the lion's den. He used his signet ring to seal the doorway, with Daniel and the lions inside, and then he returned to the palace with a heavy heart. That evening Darius had no food brought to him, no entertainment to amuse him, and he could not sleep because he was so worried about Daniel. At first light he made his way towards the lions. The stone was still in place and the seal from the signet ring. His law servants gathered around. Tentatively the king called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, answer me." And again, "Daniel, has your God whom you continually serve been able to rescue you from the lions?" Back came the muffled reply, "My lord the king, I am unhurt." Darius was overjoyed and instructed his servants to immediately break the seal, move the stone and remove Daniel from the lion's den. "My lord the king," said Daniel, bowing low, "may the king live forever. My God sent an angel to protect me. The angel made sure the mouths of the lions were shut so they couldn't harm me. I am unhurt, there isn't even a scratch on me. I've always followed the God of Israel, and he has found me innocent and kept me safe. I will praise him. Neither have I ever acted against you, my lord the king. May you live forever." Darius was overjoyed to find Daniel unharmed. He was angry that the chief ministers had clearly plotted against Daniel, and while the stone was moved away from the entrance, Darius had the chief ministers thrown to the lions, and the stone closed up again. Then Darius issued a proclamation throughout his kingdom, "May the God of Daniel be praised, for he has rescued his servant. He performs signs and wonders and endures forever. He is the living God."